My name is Amelia Rhodes, and I'm 32 years old. From the outside, people might describe me as quiet, steady, maybe even a little predictable. I've never been the type to seek out chaos or spotlight. I like the comfort of my own space, my small circle of friends, and the kind of Friday nights that end with a good book and a glass of wine instead of neon lights and crowded bars. 6 months ago, my boyfriend Jason moved into my house. We'd been together for almost 2 years at that point, and it felt like the natural next step, or at least that's what I told myself. My name is on the mortgage, on every utility bill, and on the little bronze plaque outside that reads the Rhodes Residence. I had that made years before Jason came into the picture. It was mine. But Jason isn't like me. His world is one long performance, an endless audition in front of his friends, a trio of loud, careless men I call the Jackals. Their names hardly matter because they act as one, always circling, always laughing at someone else's expense. The first crack between Jason and me didn't come in a screaming match. It came one ordinary evening in my kitchen. I was stirring a pot of pasta sauce, humming quietly to myself when Jason strolled in. He was already dressed to go out. Crisp shirt, designer cologne filling the air like a fog. His phone was pressed to his ear, his laugh sharp, echoing through the room. "Yes, absolutely, I'm in," he said into the phone. "A weekend away is exactly what I need." I paused, spoon midair. His words hit me like the faintest ripple of an earthquake. He ended the call and grinned at me, boyish, charming, infuriatingly smug. "Good news," he announced. "The guys and I are heading to the lake this weekend. We're leaving tomorrow." I blinked, trying to catch up. "Oh, okay. Which lake?" It wasn't an accusation, just a simple question, the kind two people in a relationship should be able to ask without fear. But the way Jason looked at me, you'd think I'd asked him to hand over the nuclear codes. He let out a short, dismissive laugh. And at that exact moment, his friend Marcus swaggered into my kitchen uninvited, beer already in hand. "Can you believe this?" Jason said, gesturing toward me with mock disbelief. "She wants to know where I'm going." Marcus smirked, shaking his head. "Man, she's already acting like your wife." Jason turned fully toward me then, his eyes glittering with that mix of charm and cruelty I'd started to recognize too well. He put his hands on his hips and delivered the sentence that still rings in my ears. "Stop acting like we're married. You don't get a say in where I go or who I'm with." The words landed like glass shattering against tile, and then laughter. Marcus howled. A second jackal, Dean, appeared just in time to join the chorus. They clapped Jason on the back, cackling like it was the joke of the century. In that moment, I stood frozen, a wooden spoon dripping sauce onto the floor. My chest ached, but strangely, I didn't feel rage. Not yet. Instead, a calm settled over me. Eerie, absolute. I looked at Jason's smug face, at the gleam of victory in his eyes, and I smiled. A broad, empty smile that didn't reach my heart. "You know what?" I said, my voice sweet, almost cheerful. "You're right. My mistake." They laughed harder, convinced I was conceding. Jason leaned down, patted my cheek in mock affection, and the three of them swaggered out of the kitchen, still jeering, still feeding off each other's noise. The front door slammed behind them, and silence poured into the house. For a long time, the only sound was the bubbling of the sauce on the stove and the faint hum of my refrigerator. I set the spoon down carefully, wiped my hands on a towel, and exhaled. "He said we weren't married. He said I didn't get a say." "Fine," I whispered to the empty room. "Then let's see what that really means." A plan began to take shape in my mind, sharper and more intoxicating with every second. That weekend wouldn't just belong to Jason. It would belong to me. And by the time he returned, he would learn what it meant to be taken at his word. The moment Jason's car disappeared down the street the next afternoon, stuffed with duffel bags, lake gear, and his roaring laughter bleeding out the window, I moved. Not to cry, not to beg, not to drown myself in self-pity. I moved with purpose. The first stop was next door. Mrs. Whitaker lived in the weathered blue house at the corner, 81 years old, sharp as a tack, and the proud owner of a garden that looked like something out of a fairy tale. But what people didn't know, unless you lived on this street, was that Mrs. Whitaker also ran a neighborhood surveillance system that would put the CIA to shame. 3 doorbell cameras, motion-activated lights, and a habit of sitting on her porch every evening with her knitting while keeping one eye on everyone else's business. She loved 2 things more than anything: her roses and a bit of juicy drama. I brought her a slice of lemon pound cake, her favorite, and sat beside her in the rocking chair. "Mrs. Whitaker," I said, voice soft but steady, "I need your help. It involves a little theater." Her eyes lit up instantly. She put down her knitting, leaned closer, and whispered like a co-conspirator, "Oh, Amelia, tell me everything." So I did. I told her exactly what Jason said in my kitchen. I didn't have to embellish. The truth alone was venom enough. By the time I finished, her thin lips were pressed tight, her jaw trembling with indignation. "That shameless boy," she snapped, patting my hand. "Don't you worry, dear. I'll play my part. Just tell me when and how." And so, Operation Take Back My Home officially began. I returned inside with a strange electricity running through me. For months, my house had been smothered under Jason's influence. Beige pillows that served no purpose. Pretentious art prints he swore made the place look elevated. Bowls filled with nothing. A showroom for a life that wasn't mine. It was time to reclaim it. I pulled out boxes and a thick black marker. Every item he owned went in, but not before I labeled each box with a sting only he would understand. Everyday clothes, fancy clothes for parties I wasn't invited to, hair products and colognes to impress everyone but me, sneakers purchased on credit, shirts he called limited edition but wore once. I saved the cruelest label for the last box. Things you thought mattered more than us. One by one, Jason's belongings vanished from my shelves, my drawers, my life. By midnight, his physical presence in my home was reduced to cardboard and ink. And with every item I packed, the air grew lighter. But it wasn't enough to remove him. I needed to replace him. The sterile rug he insisted on, rolled up and shoved into the garage. In its place, I unboxed a rug I'd kept hidden away. Too colorful, he once said. Too loud. Now, it stretched across my floor, bold, unapologetic, alive. His minimalist white couch, sold within hours online. The next morning, 2 men delivered a deep navy velvet sofa I'd been eyeing for months. When I sank into it, it felt like sitting in freedom itself. The walls, stripped of his meaningless prints, became a gallery of my photographs. Landscapes I'd taken on solo trips, candid shots of friends, the kind of memories Jason never understood, because they weren't staged. The house was breathing again. By Saturday afternoon, I stood in the middle of my transformed living room, hands on hips, heart racing. But something was missing. Companionship. The kind that couldn't be faked or taken away with cruel words. So I drove to the animal shelter. The woman behind the desk smiled knowingly when I told her I was just looking. An hour later, I was signing adoption papers. He was massive, a Saint Bernard with soulful brown eyes, drool hanging from his jowls, and paws the size of my palms. His name was Atlas. The moment they brought him out, he leaned his weight into my side as if he already knew I was his. I scratched behind his ears, and for the first time in months, I laughed, a laugh that belonged to me. When we got home, Atlas immediately climbed onto my brand new sofa, circled once, and collapsed with a sigh so loud it rattled the room. Within minutes, he was snoring like a freight train. I didn't mind. For the first time in half a year, the house felt like mine again. And as I looked around at the boxes stacked neatly by the door, waiting for Jason's eventual return, I whispered, "This is only the beginning," because Jason thought the weekend was about his freedom. But really, it was about mine. By Sunday night, the air in my house felt different. The walls seemed to hum with anticipation, like they were holding their breath along with me. Atlas was sprawled across the velvet sofa, snoring with a rhythm that had already become the heartbeat of my new life. I had changed the Wi-Fi password that morning. It now read, "Not married, LOL." Every trace of Jason's presence was boxed, labeled, and tucked neatly away in a storage unit across town. The receipts were in my drawer. The keys to the new locks jingled in my pocket. I was ready. At 9:07 p.m., my phone buzzed with a notification from the video doorbell. There he was. Jason, tan from the lake, hair still damp, sauntering up the front steps with his duffel bag slung over one shoulder. He was humming, lips curled, in that smug half-smile he wore like armor. I didn't move from the couch. I just stroked Atlas's fur and watched. He slid his key into the lock. Twisted. Nothing. His brows furrowed. He tried again, harder. Still nothing. A sigh. The beginnings of irritation. He banged the heel of his hand against the doorframe and muttered something under his breath. Then he jiggled the knob again, confusion blooming across his face. Inside, Atlas lifted his massive head, ears perked. A low rumble vibrated from his chest. Jason pulled out his phone and dialed. My screen lit up. His name, his face, his assumption that I would answer. I pressed decline. He called again. Decline. Again. Decline. By the 5th time, his knocks had become fists, pounding against the wood. Amelia, open the damn door. What is wrong with you? I sat back, calm as glass, and took a sip of wine. The show was just beginning. Right on cue, the porch light next door flickered on. Mrs. Whitaker stepped out in her housecoat, a watering can in one hand. She looked every bit the innocent neighbor, but I knew better. This was her stage, and she was ready for her role. "Oh my, Jason, dear," she called, voice sweetly laced with curiosity. "What's going on out here?" "Mrs. Whitaker," Jason said, relief and exasperation crashing together. "Thank God. My key isn't working. Can you tell Amelia to open the door? I can see the lights are on." Mrs. Whitaker tilted her head, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Oh, Amelia's home all right. Had herself quite the weekend, too. She told me the good news." Jason blinked, thrown off. "Good news? What are you talking about?" She leaned on her railing like a seasoned actress, lowering her voice for effect. "Why, she said you two aren't married, that you told her she doesn't get a say in what you do, so she decided to celebrate her freedom, too." I swear I could see the color drain from his face, even through the grainy video feed. "What?" His voice cracked. "Oh, yes," she continued, eyes sparkling. "She redecorated the whole house. It's her home again now, and she even got herself a new companion, a big, beautiful dog named Atlas." At the mention of his name, Atlas let out a perfectly timed, earth-shaking bark that rattled the front windows. Jason stumbled back a step, staring at the door as if it had betrayed him. His phone buzzed in his hand. A text from me. Just one. "You said we're not married. You said I don't get a say. I agree. This is my house, and you don't get a say in it anymore." For a moment, he just stood there, phone trembling between his fingers, eyes wild. Then came the shouting. "You've lost your mind, Amelia. This is insane. Open the door right now, or—" But I'd already set my phone on silent. Inside, Atlas yawned, stretched, and rested his massive head on my lap. The storm outside raged louder. Fists on the door, curses flung into the night. I just stroked my dog's fur, steady and calm. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe in my own home. Jason thought this was a game he could win. But the truth was sinking in, minute by minute, bang by bang, word by word. I had already won. The pounding on the door eventually slowed, turning into frantic rings of the doorbell. Jason's voice cracked as he shouted my name, slipping between fury and desperation. Then came the texts. One after another, a flood lit up my phone, buzzing against the coffee table like an angry wasp. "Jason, Amelia, stop this." "Jason, this isn't funny." "Jason, open the door." "Jason, babe, come on, don't do this." "Jason, are you seriously locking me out of my own place?" I let the messages pile up, my thumb hovering over the screen but never replying. Atlas huffed and shifted beside me, the weight of his head grounding me like an anchor. The text escalated. "Jason, you're insane." "Jason, do you know how humiliating this is?" "Jason, everyone can see me out here." "Jason, after everything I've done for you?" That one almost made me laugh. Everything he'd done for me. 6 months of living in my house, eating my food, draining my Wi-Fi, filling my life with noise. My pulse quickened, not with sadness, but with clarity. I picked up my phone, opened the thread, and typed one single message. "Me. You said we're not married. You said I don't get a say. I agree. This is my house, and you don't get a say in it anymore." I hit send, then I added the final nail. "Me. Your things are at 17 Oakwood Storage, Unit 5, code 2468. You have 1 month." And then I blocked him. Through the video doorbell feed, I saw him stop cold. His eyes darted across the screen, rereading, refusing to believe. He looked at the phone, at the house, at the locked door that no longer recognized his key. Then came the sound, raw, unfiltered rage, a scream that cracked through the quiet street, echoing like some wounded animal. He threw his phone onto the lawn, kicked the doorframe, shouted curses that made Mrs. Whitaker's curtains twitch with delight. Atlas rose from the sofa, hackles bristling, a low growl rumbling from deep in his chest. I whispered, "Easy, boy, he's not coming in." And he wasn't. Not tonight, not ever again. At 9:43 p.m., headlights washed over the porch. A black car pulled up, and Marcus, one of the jackals, stumbled out, laughter still on his lips until he saw Jason's face. "Man, what the hell happened?" Marcus muttered, half amused, half stunned. Jason gestured wildly at the house. "She's lost it! She locked me out, packed my stuff, got a damn dog. Can you believe this?" Marcus glanced at the doorbell camera. He knew I was watching. He shifted uncomfortably, then put a hand on Jason's shoulder. "Come on, let's get out of here. We'll figure it out tomorrow." Reluctantly, Jason scooped his shattered phone from the grass, muttering curses under his breath. He climbed into the car, his fury burning bright even as the taillights disappeared into the dark. Silence returned. Atlas climbed back onto the sofa, curling up as if the chaos outside had been nothing but a passing storm. I sat there in the quiet, staring at the empty street, my heart heavy and light all at once. Part of me whispered, "Was that too much?" But then another voice, stronger, clearer, reminded me. No, it was exactly enough. Jason had wanted a life where I had no say. And tonight, for the first time, I gave him exactly what he asked for. The first blow had landed, and it was only the beginning. I thought the worst was over once Jason finally drove away that night, but I underestimated him. By Monday morning, the war had gone digital. His Instagram story opened with a black screen and a single line in bold white letters. "Some people show their true colors when you least expect it." By noon, there were more. Posts with moody music, captions about betrayal, about being thrown out of your own home. Pictures of Jason staring out across the lake with a beer in hand, the words "Stay strong, King" plastered underneath. And of course, the jackals chimed in, resharing his posts, filling their feeds with commentary. Some women just can't handle a real man. Toxic energy doesn't deserve loyalty. Know your worth, bro. It was pathetic, performative, but it worked, at least at first. Mutual friends began messaging me, asking what had happened. A few even hinted that maybe I'd overreacted. For a brief moment, doubt seeped in. I sat on my velvet sofa, Atlas's head on my lap, scrolling through the avalanche of half-truths and lies. My chest tightened. Had I gone too far? But then Atlas snored, a sound so honest, so grounding, that my doubt cracked. I remembered Jason's words in my kitchen. "You don't get a say." And I realized the only mistake I could make now was staying silent forever. So I waited. 2 days. I let Jason and his friends rant unchecked, let their story gather attention. And then, on Wednesday evening, I made a post of my own. Not words, not accusations. Pictures. The first photo, my living room from a month ago. Jason's sterile white couch, pointless bowls, lifeless beige rug. The caption, "Before." The second photo, my living room now. Deep navy sofa, colorful rug, walls alive with photographs. Atlas sprawled across the floor like a king. The caption, "After." The third photo, a selfie. Me and Atlas on the sofa, both of us smiling, both of us free. The caption, "He told me we're not married. He told me I don't get a say, so I believed him, and I chose to say yes, to myself." I didn't tag him. I didn't need to. The post detonated like a bomb. Within hours, my inbox filled with messages, laughter, support, applause. Mutual friends who had stayed silent before now reshared my pictures. People wrote things like, "Iconic. This is the plot twist I needed today. Atlas, Jason." The tide had turned. Jason's narrative crumbled. His vague accusations looked hollow next to the vibrant evidence of my reclaimed life. His silence grew louder with each passing hour, his friends' posts dwindling into awkward quiet. For the first time in days, I laughed out loud. Later that night, as Atlas and I sat by the window watching the streetlights flicker, I realized something. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was reclamation. The house, the peace, the freedom, it was mine again. And I hadn't won by shouting louder or by tearing Jason apart. I'd won by simply showing the truth. Of course, Jason wouldn't stay quiet forever. And deep down, I knew the real fight, the one with consequences, was still coming. But as I stroked Atlas's fur, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breath, I whispered to myself, "Let him try." Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of losing him. I was afraid of ever losing myself again. By the end of the week, Jason's silence on social media wasn't just noticeable, it was damning. The jackals had stopped resharing his posts. Their feeds returned to gym selfies and late-night bar shots, conspicuously free of Jason's drama. One by one, they distanced themselves, as if they'd suddenly realized his downfall was contagious. But Jason wasn't done with me, not yet. On Friday morning, a thick envelope arrived at my door. My hands shook as I opened it, but not from fear, from anticipation. Inside, a letter from his lawyer. It demanded immediate access to my house so Jason could retrieve his wrongfully held property. It also claimed I owed him financial compensation for rendering him homeless without due cause. I almost laughed. Homeless? The man had lived in my house, off my bills, for 6 months without so much as paying for groceries. I didn't even bother drafting my own response. My lawyer, Ms. Chen, handled it with the precision of a surgeon. She attached copies of my mortgage, every bill in my name, and a concise statement. Our client provided Mr. Lawson 6 months of housing, utilities, and food free of charge. If Mr. Lawson wishes to pursue legal action, we will require documentation of his financial contributions, or lack thereof, during this time. The letter ended with one question. Does Mr. Lawson intend to reimburse Ms. Rhodes for half a year of rent, utilities, and living expenses? We never heard from his lawyer again. The ripple effects came fast. Jason, no longer welcome in my house, tried crashing with Marcus. That lasted 3 days. From what I heard, Marcus's girlfriend grew tired of Jason's complaining and his refusal to chip in for rent. He moved on to Dean's place next. That one lasted less than a week. By the time Jason showed up at the last jackal's apartment, his reputation had caught up to him. No one wanted a freeloader with a bruised ego and no plan. And so, the man who once strutted through my kitchen like a king was reduced to sleeping in his car, nursing his pride in the parking lot of a strip mall. I didn't feel joy in his downfall. Not exactly. What I felt was relief, because for once his chaos wasn't mine to manage. Meanwhile, my own life began to bloom in the space he left behind. The house no longer felt like a beige museum. It pulsed with color and warmth. On Saturday mornings, I opened the windows and let sunlight spill across the rug Jason once called too loud. On Sundays, I lounged on the velvet sofa with Atlas, watching old movies and eating popcorn straight from the bowl, a bowl that, for once, had purpose. My friends came over more often. They said the house felt different now, lighter, freer, more me. And they were right. I was learning how to breathe again. But freedom has a way of drawing shadows. One evening, while walking Atlas down the quiet street, I caught a glimpse of Jason's car parked at the corner, headlights off. His silhouette sat stiff behind the wheel, watching. Atlas growled low in his throat, muscles tense. I didn't stop, didn't wave, didn't give him the satisfaction of knowing I'd seen. Instead, I tightened my grip on Atlas's leash and walked back inside, shutting the door firmly behind me. I leaned against it for a moment, heart pounding, before whispering to myself, "He doesn't get a say, not anymore." And in that silence, I knew Jason's story wasn't just ending. It was unraveling, piece by piece. It happened on a gray Thursday afternoon, weeks after the locks had changed and the last of Jason's boxes had been claimed from storage. Atlas and I were at the park. He bounded across the field like a lumbering bear, clumsy paws chasing after a squeaky tennis ball that seemed comically small in his jaws. I laughed, really laughed, the sound bursting out of me before I could stop it. That's when I heard my name. Amelia? I turned, the laughter fading into surprise. Standing a few feet away was Dean, one of the jackals. For a moment, I froze. Instinct urged me to turn and walk the other way. But something in his posture stopped me. His hands were shoved deep into his jacket pockets, his eyes fixed on the ground. There was no swagger, no mocking grin, just hesitation. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. I nodded once, cautious. We sat on a park bench, Atlas sprawling between us, a living barrier. Dean cleared his throat, glanced at me, then quickly looked away. "Look," he started, voice rough. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry about that night, about laughing, about all of it." I studied him, unsure what game he was playing. "Why now?" He exhaled sharply. "Because I've been watching Jason implode, and the truth is, he's been blaming you for everything. Said you ruined his life, turned his friends against him, but—" Dean shook his head. "We didn't need your help for that. He did it himself." The honesty in his tone caught me off guard. Dean went on, his voice low. "That night in your kitchen, I thought it was just a joke. Just Jason being Jason. But seeing it from the outside now, it wasn't funny. It was cruel, and you didn't deserve it." For a long moment, I said nothing. The air between us was heavy with things left unsaid. Finally, I spoke. "You're right, I didn't deserve it, but I also didn't deserve your laughter." Dean winced, nodding. "I know, and I regret it." His eyes flicked toward Atlas, who was now attempting to fit 2 tennis balls in his mouth at once. A faint smile tugged at Dean's lips. "Looks like you're doing better without him anyway." I followed his gaze, warmth spreading through me as I watched my dog's ridiculous determination. "I am," I admitted softly. "For the first time in a long time, I actually am." Dean stood, shoving his hands deeper into his pockets. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. We all see Jason for who he is now, and maybe you were braver than we gave you credit for." He walked away before I could reply. I sat there on the bench, Atlas's head pressed against my leg, my thoughts tangled. It wasn't closure, not exactly, but it was something, a small piece of truth from someone who had once mocked me. And in that moment, I realized I didn't need Jason's friends to see me clearly. I just needed to see myself. As the sky darkened and Atlas nudged the tennis ball into my hand again, I whispered a quiet promise. No more shrinking, no more silence, never again. Because Dean was right about one thing. I had been braver than they realized. And soon, I would be braver than even I believed. It's strange how endings don't come with the sharp slam of a door or the cut of a final word. Sometimes they just fade in quietly, like the slow settling of dust after a storm. Jason faded. One day, he was still sending vague posts online, still trying to spin the story, still trying to make himself the victim. The next, he wasn't. His friends stopped sharing. His name stopped appearing. And eventually, his presence in my life, digital or otherwise, dissolved into nothing. What remained was silence. And for the first time in months, it wasn't the heavy silence of neglect. It was peace. On a Sunday morning, I sat on my sofa with Atlas snoring beside me, his paw draped lazily over my lap. Sunlight spilled across the floor, illuminating the vibrant rug Jason once called too loud. My photographs smiled down at me from the walls, each one a reminder of who I was before him, and who I had finally found again. I thought about that night in the kitchen, the wooden spoon in my hand, the laughter at my expense, Jason's smug face as he said, "Stop acting like we're married. You don't get a say in where I go or who I'm with." Those words had cut me open, but they had also freed me. Because when someone tells you exactly how little you mean to them, you have a choice. You can cling harder, or you can believe them. And I chose to believe him. The greatest revenge I ever took wasn't boxing his things or changing the locks. It wasn't even the viral post that turned the tide of sympathy my way. It was reclaiming myself, my house, my peace, my laughter. The quiet joy of a dog who never asked me to be smaller, never mocked me for wanting simple things. The reminder that love, real love, doesn't dismiss, doesn't belittle, doesn't reduce. It protects, it builds, it stays. As Atlas rolled over, belly exposed in total trust, I smiled and whispered into the warm air of my home. "You said I don't get a say, and now in my life, you don't get one either." The words didn't carry bitterness anymore. They carried closure. Because this wasn't just the end of Jason's story. It was the beginning of mine. I leaned back, the weight of Atlas grounding me, and let the truth wash over me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a grand scheme. It's the quiet, steady act of moving on, and being happier than they ever imagined you could be. And that, I realized, was the lesson I had needed all along.